Hello and welcome to Author Nation. I'm Melody, I'm your host, and today we are talking about becoming an expert author, an expert marketer. What does it mean to be an expert? As the founder of Author Nation, and you are here watching because you are either an author or you want to be an author, and we have the resources for you. So if you are looking to write a book, publish a book, or promote a book, you can go to authornation.online and get the resource that fits wherever you happen to be in your author journey. The link is authornation.online. That is scrolling past you right now, and it is in the description. All right, our guest today, I'm so excited, Duane Scott Cerny, is a humorist and author of Selling Dead People's Things, a #1 Amazon best-selling vintage memoir in US and Canada. It was named by The Advocate as one of the top 20 LGBTQ plus memoirs of the year. His latest book, Vintage Confidential Retro Rattled, presently holds the distinction of garnering all 5-star reviews. Cerny is the co-owner of the Broadway Antique Market BAM, the oldest and largest multi-dealer antique store in Chicago. A former ex-Second City stand-up comic, he is an award-winning poet, essayist for the New York Times, a performance storyteller, and a recording artist on the French label Les Disques de la Mort. Let's welcome Duane. Hello, Duane. How are you today?
Melody, thank you. Very good.
Wonderful. Okay, so first question. You told me your favorite word was resilient. So
yes.
Why is that your favorite word? What does that mean to you?
I have learned more from failing than succeeding. And by being resilient, it's that falling forward no matter what, because we're all going to find failures. And I think it stiffens one's resolve in moving forward and doing what you want. It's being resilient is not giving up no matter what, no matter who says this isn't good, I don't like it, you're ugly, whatever. Yeah, and I feel it's kind of a survivor's word. And it's a good word to always have in the back of your head to say, am I resilient? And you want to answer yes. You always want to answer yes.
Yes. And I see people going out and trying something once and it not working. And they're like, it doesn't work. I got to stop, give up, try something else. And then they try A and B and C and nothing works. It's like, no, just keep doing A 100 times over and then it'll work. Thank you. So you do an eclectic number of things, right? So tell us a little bit about how you came to have this varied career.
I've thought about this, and I come from parents that had worked for Sears Roebuck or a printing company for 40 years. Everybody's like, that was from that generation. Your parents worked for get one company and get a pension and all that. And maybe that was because I'm not from an entrepreneurial family by any means. So maybe part of it was like, we just reject whatever our parents were doing. And it wasn't that I didn't try, but the first 3 jobs I got out of college, every company went out of business, like right out from underneath me. And so, and then by the 3rd one, I'm thinking, is it me? And I knew it wasn't, but you just start to think I'm just bad luck. So when the last one went under, basically I thought, well, I could go out of business myself. So I'll just start my own business. And I went and I reached back to the contacts that I'd made, which were lawyers. And because at that time I was a word processing paralegal. And then I got like, I don't know, half the clients at least. And I was set in that I had a little business. I had a little business. And it was successful and it made money. And then at that time, a friend of mine came along and said, there's this music thing going on in Chicago, which was called house music. And I think it would be kind of fun to put our toes into that. And I went to school on a poetry scholarship. What are you going to do with that? Though I'm very proud of it now. At the time I was, my father said, what are you going to do? Sit on a mountaintop? Which pretty much. And then I went, well, I'm a lyricist. And I thought, well, I can't sing, but but very much spoken words. We did that to house music, and then brought on other artists, and that took off. And we did that for a while. Uh, uh, Unfortunately, I'm going to say in caps, bold letters, almost everyone involved with the label passed of AIDS, all but like 2 or 3.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And it was just, I couldn't pick that up. I couldn't.
No.
I didn't continue with that. I just didn't have. My business partner had died, and he'd been the one who had suggested it. And we were licensing music all over the world. And again, paralegal background. You know, it was like going, hey, yeah, I can I can write for business, or I can market something in promotional. So I think my writing skills played into that. All you English majors out there who think you can't do anything, it's just the opposite. You can do anything, right? The linguist. So I think, I mean, that's broadly, I think that's the base of how I got started, and then had to restart and back to the word resilient.
Right, right. No, that was the AIDS epidemic was an absolutely tragic time in our history. So I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, resilience, right? To come through that resilient is the only word I can think of. So this is the central theme of everything you do, because you're also into antiques, right? So is the central theme of what you do, or what tethers it together? Is it the poetry? Is it the love of language?
I do think it's the love of language, yeah. And there's certainly when it comes to antiques, it's the love of objects. And my books really revolve around people and objects, and my writing about both, and how and I always say, nothing in your home got there randomly. It's gifted to you. You chose it. You inherited it, and it says everything about you. Unless you shop at IKEA, and then you got help. All your apartments look the same, and I can't help you. But the antique world, vintage world, is a whole entity by itself. If you've gotten the bug and you get it. I don't have to explain it.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about my own life, right? You know, when I think about certain objects in my life, what matters is that they have meaning. And same with people, right? People have meaning to me. These objects have meaning to me. Like if you look behind me, I have all these things from traveling and books I love, and these all hold great meaning to me. So I get that. So, it's one thing we want to talk about is being an expert. And so you've done comedy and lyrics and music and antiques. How are you an expert in all of them? How do you define expert? Do you need to be an expert to start something, to stand up and say you do it? Can you just kind of give me your perspective on this idea of expert? Because so many people I can't write a book, I'm not an expert. Give me your ideas on that.
Absolutely. No, big no. Now, I don't feel I'm an expert on really anything. But that being said, you can be good at something, right? And you can be very good at something. You can be exceptional at something. But then also, what is the goal? If the goal is to be exceptional and making money, is the goal to be exceptional and being well known for being whatever it is that you're doing, or is it a self-satisfaction? Which honestly, I think if you're not being happy with yourself and what you're doing, it's really like, first be an expert in you, which sounds like a bad Hallmark card. But
no.
So, or a fortune cookie. You're going, what the hell does that mean? And then it isolates what makes you happy, and what you're an expert in. And I'll give you an example. I was taking an Uber. And here, I mean, this is why I wanted to do this show, because let's just say it seems like half of everyone has a book idea, and they're going, "Oh, it's silly," and nobody did that. And so I always talk to Uber drivers, and it's not like I come in and say, "Hey, I'm an author, I want to talk," but invariably it comes around, and they'll be talking very passionately about something. And the one guy was telling me about how he just has this fascination with mushrooms, and not like in a druggy way, but and it comes from his mother being Italian, and they go out in the woods and they find mushrooms. I'm not going to drill down into that. And he says, I'd love to write a book about that, but I don't think anybody would read it. Oh my gosh, they would. That's a fantastic idea for a book.
It is.
And I go, how did I do it? I said, yeah, you just told me part of it. How you got into it. What is that like to go out and get it? Finding these new mushrooms, what they can do for people. It's green. It's a 21st century idea. You know,
Absolutely.
I probably wouldn't buy the book or eat his mushrooms, but that's not the point. I know. I immediately knew. And honestly, even some of the ideas that are not so great, it can be like, that can be crafted. You've got something there. It's just me. I just look for the positive. There has to be something there. So yeah. Question.
And the topic itself, mushrooms. So I'm a hiker. Every once in a while, I meet someone who's foraging for mushrooms, and we have the best conversations. And they show me the mushrooms. We learn about the mushrooms. I figure out what I can eat and what I can't eat. I would buy the book, right? So turns out I'd buy the book because that's something I do is talk to mushroom people when I'm hiking.
We did not know this. Audience did not know this. So exactly, it can be the I'd say oddest thing. It was odd to me, but I still got it.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is don't wait to be an expert to go do something or write something or be something or try something. If you feel passionate about it, go out and do it. Go out and write about it. It's in living that you become an expert. It's in living that you find self-satisfaction and self-fulfillment. It's not in waiting until. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, and it's the experience of the doing. I love. There was a story once about how a guy approached Andy Warhol on the streets of New York, and he said, Mr. Warhol, I just love your art, your photography, and I want to be a photographer, and I don't even know where to start. And he says, are you a photographer? And he says, well, I'm an amateur. And he just touched him. Andy touched him, and he says, now you're a photographer. And that guy would become a fairly well-known portraiture artist and doing photography. It's like he needed to be acknowledged by somebody. And Andy didn't know him. You want to be a botanist. You're a botanist. Like he's blessing people. But listen, it would have made a lot to me if he came up and said, you're a poet or you're a humorist. So I think that's part of it. It's just, and what did this guy do? He just went out and kept taking pictures. I was doing stand-up, and I got paid for it for a while. This is in my late 20s, early 30s. There was a comedy club out in Schaumburg, the suburb of Chicago. I actually fell off the stage. Right off the stage. Anyway, I got back on and I said, just so everybody knows, the stage ends right here. It ends I'm doing this, gay comedy monologue in the 80s, which was like a tough crowd. But it's deep end of the pool, and I think a lot of my stuff has just been doing things that would make me uncomfortable. And then you're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Out of that comfort zone.
Yeah. And you said something that I think is really, really important. So who gave Andy Warhol to be who he was? Right. And so what, why are we waiting for permission? This man who wanted to be a photographer, who didn't have the self confidence to be a photographer, was touched by Andy Warhol and given permission to be. And then he went on and he did well. Well, what would have happened to him if Andy Warhol hadn't given him permission? Right. Where would he be today? Right? Would he have eventually stood up and said, I give myself permission? Or would he be a shrinking violet? Right? So don't ask for permission. You know what to do when it's your turn. It's your turn now. Right now it's your turn. Right? So take your turn.
Exactly. exactly. And this
Yeah.
isn't some, it's what I say, this isn't some like new agey thing where we're saying it's simple. And so many, it's we humans who complicate things. Yeah. So it just simplify it, narrow it down. I've got lots of ideas for people like who want to like, how do I break this book? Because here mine was self-published, turned down by 70 publishers, which is like shit.
Yeah.
But just to keep going, and really it was probably because I was turning 60, and it was on my bucket list of like, I always wanted to write a book. Why can't I write a book? I can write a book. And I got lucky on like lots of other elements of doing it, and I don't really think it would have been as successful if I hadn't been 60 years old, because I had these life experiences and stories and that resilience going like, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was at the age I don't have to ask permission. There may not be too much more time to be asking anybody for permission. So you put that aside.
Yeah, let's talk about the book. So, and it's called Selling Dead People's Things, and it kind of brings me back to your idea of objects with meaning and people with meaning. When I die, there's going to be all this stuff, and people are going to come in, and a lot of it, people are going to look at like, well, what in the heck's that? That's just garbage to me, right? But some things, people, that's just like they only hold meaning for that one person.
Yeah.
But then there are other things other objects that you can, after I pass, you'll say, oh, wow, she has a, whatever, that's valuable, and I'll pass that on. So tell me a little bit about, after someone passes, and this is a topic nobody ever wants to talk about except me, because I used to work for a cemetery, so I have no problem talking about death at all. I talked about it every day, 9 to 5, right, for years. What makes something valuable and saleable after I die, and what doesn't?
Time and taste and trends.
Okay.
So one thing I would say was like, who knew that vinyl would come back? So if you collected vinyl and still have vinyl in your home, well, they're gonna want that. And even into we 90s, 80s, 90s clothes, of course, is hot. But we've already gone into the aughts of younger people of buying, and mainly because the quality of everything gets crappier as time goes on. That's just the truth, right? Just everything. And for younger people, meaning college students or things like that, vintage is green. It's a smaller carbon footprint. All these things, like, I don't want to buy anything new that's going to end up in a landfill. And it's made better, and it's cheaper. I mean, again, like I've started with, if you get it, you get it. So as opposed to like, oh, these are dead people's things. Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of these things are secondhand, would be more, or that's why we
third or fourth.
Why do you say vintage? I mean, honestly, if somebody came into your apartment, the first person would just grab all the plants because they're saving them like they're kittens.
Right.
So, right? That's the first thing. Oh my God, no one's wanted these plants. So somebody's I'm taking all these plants. So, but time in terms of and some of these things are just unpredictable. That's why I'm talking about objects versus a vinyl. Well, the one thing I always mention to people, and I think it may blow your mind, it blows most people's mind, is objects. So I'm fascinated with photography, and I've been collecting photography forever. And from tintypes and carte visites, CDVs or cabinet cards, which are larger ones, and snapshots. People know snapshots, right? But how many of these pictures that we take do we print?
Yeah, exactly.
Right now, and why is that important? And not important that you're not printing them, but by them not being printed, they don't become an object.
Mm-hmm.
Become an object. And what's great about, I'm going to say, early even vintage photography, let's just say, into, oh my gosh, 70s, 80s, whatever, when they were still printing photographs. Huge interest in that, because it's kind of a dead technology, because we don't print these images.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that there's this device that actually made an object, right? So I think 3D printing is that, and I'm not sure what they'll be making and what the resale element of those objects will be. But
Yeah.
but kind of the bigger picture of that, and now I got museums. Uh, 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 the Getty bought the Sam Wagstaff and Maplethorpe collections, and because they were big collectors as well as artists. Oh, come on, when the Getty is buying images, right? Yeah, rich people are snapping up images all over the place. So like that's the thing. But like, who knew that? Right?
No, exactly. Yes.
And then now they're re-releasing things on vinyl, because people want that crack and the pop and the. I guess I'm selling a cereal here, but they want that vinyl audio, that makes it real to them. So things change. And I was trying to point that out, because people think of vintage, of your aunt's, she had doilies and she liked hall pottery, and yet, we sell that. But it's a much bigger, it's $1 billion market that the media really mostly doesn't get. You're just getting these things from HGTV or some guys running around supposedly in a van, and or the unreality of reality TV. So.
Yeah.
I mean, a store since 1990, so 33 years.
Yeah.
That's the place. That's the Broadway Antique Market.
Yeah.
It's a physical brick and mortar place, and that was one big thing that I wanted to do. And I mean, it started out small, but the idea that there was just a physical place, and not a lot of antique stores open, and here to survive this through the internet and the pandemic, and on and on. So
yeah. So I have to admit, when I first saw the title "Selling Dead People's Things," there was a part of me that wanted to clean up my house and become a minimalist. I have to admit, there's just a part of me. It's like, make sure you have as little as possible, right? And then, but let's talk about the book. Let's talk about the genre of the book. Like, what type of book is this? What will readers find in the book? Tell us a little bit more about the book, because the title is intriguing.
Yeah, and the title is an expression in the vintage business. I can't say I came up with it. It would be, I would hear this and people would use that expression. Dead people's things. And I thought, well, this has to be a little more active than that. And I thought, well, what have I been doing? I've been selling these things. And in a way, this really started off as people may be surprised, as a business book, because I just thought, and even when people say, well, my life isn't interesting enough to be in a memoir, and I absolutely thought that. I mean, I might have done these things, but who cares? But so I tried to just write down the history of how all this started, and how we got to, it goes to about the year 2000. That journey. But then in between that, so I have this manuscript, we'll just throw that over there, that I kept fiddling with, going, I hate it. I just hate it. I hate reading. I don't like writing about me. I'm not comfortable with that. It's just, but I still did it. But during the same time, I would make little notes when I was at estate sales or called into an estate. And I always say, this is 1 in every 100 would be interesting. So it doesn't happen every day. And then I would be, oh my gosh, there's a story here. This is fantastic. And then I kind of put on the hat of, I'll give a nod to him, a Studs Terkel, somebody that just tells the story. I'm not good at making shit up, but I'm fairly good at accurately reporting, presenting, even if it's a difficult situation, and writing about that. So writing about that estate. And I started these stories, or I would make a list of like, oh yeah, that time I went to the to the guy's house and he took me under the porch, which turned out to be a fantastic story. But yeah,
It would scare me. So
yeah,
where?
saw, yeah. Some odd situations. You're like, how did I get myself in this one? But I would say, oh yeah, that story, and then I would maybe do a draft of it. And those were so much easier to write. And I love that couple there, and they passed. Just got a flavor for them, and there were a couple of normal experiences that I had or was exposed to, and I thought I need to report it. I need to state it. And people can believe it or not, and they say, well, these are people's stories, and very much connected with vintage things. And not that we're going to get into every doll is haunted. I'm not going down that road. Every other thing is haunted, and I don't believe that though. But I do believe things have energy that
Right.
we're all bouncing around with molecules here, and I do think there's an energy, and every once in a while people connect to these things, and we'll get back to the book, but I want to make an expression there. When people go and they say, I'll say, why are you buying this? And somebody will say, I don't know, it's hope.
Interesting.
What does that mean?
Interesting.
Why do people say that? Well, no, it didn't. It didn't, but it did in a different way.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, so I have this whole collection of stories that I've written, and I've got this memoir that I've written, and I invited a friend of mine, Mark Caturno, who's a composer and a writer, and he became my dramaturge. And we took all the chapters and we spread them out all over the floor. And he said, you know what? Because one story had gotten published in the New York Times, which was, for me, was huge. And that's called Traces of a Man Who Disappeared. And you can Google it right now. Well, not now, later. New York Times. And it's if that doesn't work, don't read my other stuff. But right. It was such a good story, and I think I was able to tell it honestly, and I think I was the person who needed to tell it. I don't think there was such a coincidence in that, because it's just that. So what the memoir is I take you to estates that I've experienced, and you're there with me, and then I take you to a story about how I got started selling other kids' stuff off my parents' porch. So like it was a consignment store for toys. So I, again, entrepreneur at 10. And then I tell you another story. So so it's a hybrid of a memoir. And pardon?
It's weaved together.
Yes. And it's always like, if you don't like my story, we'll skip to the next story. It's certainly a book you can pick up. But I do appreciate that people have embraced it as a business book too, because it's like, yeah, you can do this. You can do this. Selling the strangest things too. Yes. Yeah.
What is the strangest thing you've sold? I have to ask. Now you've said that, I have to ask.
Well, the most disappointing thing that was strange was I was getting, this is in the first store, and I was getting the place ready for the day, and the dealers come in and restock their booth, and I'm running around, and there was a water pitcher. And I went, wow, that's a cool water pitcher. I haven't seen that before. And I pick it up, and on the bottom it says Lusitania. Right? I'm like, Lusitania? Like, how could that be from Lusitania? That was torpedoed and gone in 15 minutes. What? So anyway, I should have bought it. What an idiot, right? So it's still a pretty strange thing. And half an hour later, a guy comes in, he walks up to the counter with the pitcher, and he goes, hey, this is from Lusitania. And I said, yeah. And he goes, how do you think that happened? And then I'm just thinking, and I thought, this is probably somebody who lifted it on an earlier transatlantic voyage before the ship had sunk. because they're just
Yeah.
Lusitania merchandise floating around. Pardon the expression, right? And then the guy says, "Do you have any more?" Yeah, yeah. You know, I have. Let me have that and hit myself in the head with it. That's what I got. I've got no brain for not buying that. It was like $45. I mean, the guy, you know, he's got an IRA account now on on selling that. So, but I sold sideshow animals and sideshow posters and oddities, and I've been propping movies again since 1990. We've done hundreds of things. We did Oprah's book club when she had a book club. We propped tables, and we had a kitchen set that sat 20 people. It was a custom made Formica 50s dinette. You
Oh,
know,
I
you
want that.
dinette, but enormous.
Yeah.
It was for her book club. We did Brewster Place, which was her first like scripted show. A lot of people don't remember that because it wasn't exactly a hit. But anything that was filmed in Chicago, the prop people came in and said, "Hey, what do you guys got?" So that's a whole other, you know, side business. And I've completely gone off topic.
Yeah, that's okay. It was absolutely fascinating. It's my fault. I asked the question.
Yeah.
So your first book was Selling Dead People's Things. And if you're out there and you want to get your hands on the book, Selling Dead People's Things, you can go to sellingdeadpeoplesthings.com and get it there, and also learn more about Duane and as well. But you have a second book, and I want to get into like self-publishing, but just very quickly, will you tell us a little bit about Vintage Confidential?
So and both books available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a plug. Why not? We're Selling Dead People's Things has certainly a spooky vibe to it. And I didn't want to do part 2, and people asked for that. And I that's definitely, which is stupid of me, but I just don't repeat myself. I think, you know, other than personally. So the next book, Vintage Confidential, is sexier.
Well, the cover certainly is.
Right. Oh, it was funny. I've gotten that on TV. It's funny, they'll start moving things in front of that. You know, why does this woman have those two
I love it.
people on leashes? And that's for my photo collection. So again, ties this in, you know. And that's and it's not a costume party. No, it's not what's going on.
No, I know.
So and I had stories that were more adult nature.
Right.
I could put in there, and then I could also include some of my other writing. So people would be like, if you like my style. So there are things that are very, very funny, I think, and things that are sad and things that are moving. I mean, I think it covers the gamut, but it's very much an homage to those 50s confidential magazines of gossip and rumor, and it just felt right to me as my editor. You thought this is a much better book. I don't know if the public will agree. It's probably a much better reflection of actually me, you know, in my writing and my style of writing. There've been some. I love the comments. Some of the bad comments online, but somebody said it was like I'm like Truman Capote taking Irma Bombeck vintage shopping.
I love it. I love it.
Wow, I mean,
hilarious.
that's a huge compliment for both those writers. I'll say that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love the image too. So all right, let's get into self-publishing. You are a true entrepreneur. It makes sense to me that you self-published your book. You've talked about marketing. You actually talked about, you know, pay it forward as part of your marketing. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Well, part of this, like I mentioned, with my Uber driver, and there's been many Uber drivers who have a lot of time thinking about what book they want to write. So there's always, you know, there's that. Well, people reach out to me, which I love, and either through the internet or at a book signing or at a book reading, and I really try to keep in touch with people, and and encourage them, be a sounding board, for them. And that's kind of the pay it forward. And that's what I mean. Before Noah would approach me, I would like, why wouldn't they? What does that guy know? Um, uh, I'm so flattered by that. I'm in a couple Facebook groups that same thing, and that's also why I wanted to do this show. So very, very much, and thank you right now, because I knew to reach out to people like that, and it's, oh gosh, I get so much more out of it than they do. I really do. So the pay it forward is obviously an expression, which I think is a kind of an odd expression, but it's just, I don't know, it's just the kind of, I go to this, and so much of life is, what is the right thing? Always asking, what's the right thing to do here? And if somebody asks you, oh my gosh, you're going to help them, well, that's the right thing. That's, I don't have to think twice about that. We're going to go to dinner. I have no idea. What's the right thing there? But when it comes to talking to people, I just,
but that's
your letters,
that fits into marketing, right? That fits into marketing. If you're out there and you're willing to help and help people and lift them up, I mean, they obviously are interested in help. They're going to be. I remember when Dwayne helped me, right? And then Dwayne has this new book, and hey, I can't wait to lift him back up. And so I think it's about lifting each other up. So you were talking about, is your book in bookstores? Were you trying to get it in? Was that a challenge? If you
we got it. How much time do we have? I'll make it brief. I have, first off, I want to say I have a fantastic group of women behind me. I mean, not like as backup singers, but so my editor, my copywriter, my proofreader, the designers of the book, and there's multiple people. So having good people around you means a lot, and it also means that certainly with writing, hire an editor, and interview them. That's how do I do this? Interview them. Interview at least 3, and then who do you connect with? Right? Who you got a good feel for? Let's listen to the little voice in your head, and not just keep. But you have to have an editor. Don't if it's writing. So I was in Barnes and Noble, which was really hard to get into, and then they filed it under reference because the antique says under reference, which a reference is Google.
Yeah.
Right? No one's at reference is the very bottom shelf, right? And I would go into stores and I would find my book there, like upside down, and so you just see the pages. You don't even see it. It was a disaster. The only place that sent books back, and they send them back because they didn't sell. And then Barnes and Noble started closing locations left and right, and God bless them, but it was like I've seen enough sinking ships, so didn't work. You didn't help me. I would go to stores and say, hey, can we put this in the Chicago section? Because there's all these Chicago stories. Can we put it in can we put it anywhere other than this bottom shelf, right? Where only toddlers can spit on it. I mean,
exactly. So what have you done instead?
Right. So, I started hitting up other, and it would sell really well in my store. So I started hitting up other owners of antique malls and wholesaling to them under fantastic terms. We won't even get into it. Just like, take these books, and if you sell them, send me some money. And honestly, everyone oftentimes pays me as soon as they get the books, which is shocking. I'm sure I'll learn to get to the point where that won't happen again. But here's the other thing for people, though. So then it's like, okay, where else would this sell?
Yeah.
Just right. So, okay, I'm just going to go into it. Okay. Souvenir stores in Salem, Massachusetts. Anything paranormal, any of the oddity stores. Again, they're not all paranormal stories, but you see that cover and it's satisfying enough and it scratches the itch. And then you get in there and you go, oh, this guy writes about all this old stuff. So, it fits. So I tell people, look at your manuscript or if you've already if you're finished the book, look at that book and kind of step aside from it.
Mm-hmm.
What are the topics in there that would be relatable to where else that could be sold? So don't think about, honestly, you totally want to be in indie bookstores. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. And that's being friendly to people who are own a bookstore. They're not making money. They're doing it because they love books. So you're that same person. So that's how you get a book into independent bookstores.
Yeah.
Meet the people. You've got a computer in your pocket. You've got Facebook. There's all this information out there. You could even just Google topics that your book covers and just looking for ideas. Just say, I'm researching. And you know what? There will be some, I don't know, let's say the guy with the mushrooms, right? There's all kinds of cooking shops, little stores that sell, oh gosh, you name it, right? Cutlery, or very, very niche stores. I mean, retail is tough, and we have to look at that.
Yep, hikers, any kind of.
Yeah, I hear you. You'd have all kinds of where this could be. Yeah, sporting goods, but again, like kind of niche sporting goods stores, and you're like, oh yeah, and they're gonna look at it. Going, oh, well, we could sell that. They'll tell you. It's really not much of a sell. It's just people sell themselves.
Yeah.
And what I do want to say, really important, you've got to have a killer cover. Yes. You have to have a captivating cover. Unfortunately, the one thing I don't like about self-publishing, even though the quality of the writing has gotten much, much better, and there's some wonderful people out there, these covers, they're just awful. They're just awful. And you're competing with all those other books. So you've got to jump out there in a different way, which is a clever title if you can come up with something, and or an image. And let me tell you, people have pitched me books, and as far as covers, and I would say this looks like Martha Stewart's attic was the one, or she was going to have a book in her attic, and I would go like, I wouldn't buy this book. This isn't that book. So there's one thing I could say: think about your book as a product, because it's a product first, right? It's not diminishing anybody's writing skills. I hope inside it should be incredible. It should be the best you can do. You got to work on that. But first, it's a product. So it's a box of Cheetos, for God's sakes, and it's sitting on the shelf, and you've got to get their attention. So that's why the cover is so important. And to think about it like that, when you think about it as a product, you start thinking about it more as a business. And if you're self-publishing, you're in a business. You've just started a business.
It's so true.
People forget that.
Yes, absolutely. So a good cover, and I'm going to add good copy as well. So, I've read some really bad copy on the back of a book. Like, this book is about type copy. I've read some really bad copy. So you want some good copy. Leave them hanging. Leave them with a question or something where they're like, I have to know, right? I have to buy the book because I have to know. Absolutely. So what are some other kind of out of the box as we wrap up here? What are really fast, 3 ideas? Here's three ideas out of the box marketing.
Don't underrate celebrities. About getting some kind of an endorsement of quotes. I've gotten tons of quotes for my books, and I reached out and I did that, and I didn't necessarily know these people, but then they wanted to be associated with it, and that was a tip I got from an agent that things didn't work out, but it was a great tip. so be nice. Be nice, be patient, be pleasant, even if you don't want to be, right? It's your disposition is reflected in the other person's. And the biggest thing, which we start with, but we'll end with 3, is ask. SK. Ask. Really, whatever it is. I mean, ask the freaking universe if you're really unsure. But I mean that with all specificity. Is that asking, and again, it'll be, people can say, I'm not interested now. Get back to me in a couple months, and then write it in your calendar and get back to them couple months. Just keep asking, because there's no way that people, they're not mind readers. Nobody knows what you want to do. You're not even sure what you want to do. But once you've decided this is what I want to do, ask. And then there's a lot of people say, you know what? And I'll also say this one, you know what? This isn't for me. You know what? You should talk to so and so. Or if you get a no and say, gee, like let's just say a rejection letter. If you get some just blanket rejection letter, forget it. But if they've made a personal note on this, I really enjoyed this. It's not for us, but I want you to keep going. Write that person and say, so appreciative of the words. If you have anybody else that you could suggest, so ask. Simple things again.
I love that. Dwayne, where can people get a copy of your book?
So you can get an autographed copy of my book at sellingdeadpeoplesthings.com, vintageconfidential.com. It's also available on Earhart's Press. You can Google that. And of course, Amazon. And order through your local indie bookstore. They can get, if they don't have it, they can get it for you. Support small business. Yeah. All these things I'm saying, I should have said that first. Support small business. That's keeping this whole economy going and keeping people employed, and giving us a chance to talk to folks like you.
Exactly. And where can people reach out to you? Where can people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me. I'm on Instagram and YouTube. I'm sorry, at Vintage Confidential. You can go to those sites. I'm on Vintage Confidential. Facebook, Dwayne Scott Cerny. There's a book site for selling dead people's things on Facebook. There's a fan page for it. Who knew? I'm on TikTok. So as Dwayne Scott Cerny, I put out a video every day about all kinds of things. Funny things, spooky things, the news. I'm all over the place.
Excellent. Well, send those links over and I'll drop them into the description for everyone. Dwayne, thank you so much for showing up today and having this conversation with me. I've really enjoyed it. We've talked about so many different things.
This is best. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And so thank you so much for coming out today and joining us. Next week, we are going to be talking about, I should say, engaged writing creates engaged readers. And sometimes people are like, oh, writing's so hard. But if you're engaged when you're writing, your readers are going to be engaged reading it. I will see you then for that conversation.